Now I would like to broaden the lens a little bit to have a subsequent conversation with three leaders that are at the forefront of science, of government, and of academia. And I would like to invite the three panelists on stage. While I am introducing them, we will have Professor Ajay Kumar Sood, Principal Science Advisor to the Government of India. Professor Lise Korsten, President of the African Academy of Sciences. And Professor Mirabelle Muûls, Co-Director of the School of Convergence Science Sustainability at Imperial College London. Let's sit down. So, we have heard from Magdalena Skipper that science ecosystems need diversity, need adaptability, need trust, a trust in science that we also are losing for bad reasons. Let's explore maybe what this means in practice with you. And it will be interesting to look at this from three different vantage points. The vantage point of science academies, the vantage point of government science advice, and the one of universities. So let me start with you, Professor Sood. You play a central role in advising the government of India on science. So from your vantage point as advisor, what is the biggest challenge to keeping research ecosystems resilient to all the changes that are coming or the changes that are needed? And how can governments support that resilience?
Okay, yeah. I hope I'm audible. Thank you for having me here. It's one thing we have to realize that we are really in a time when there is a delicate balance between openness in science and strategic sovereignty of critical technologies. So I think the challenges right now are much more than they were probably 15 years ago. So in that context, what country should do for its development so that the science really goes to the society is something we need to look at with a lens that we have a good balance of deciding what our priorities are, where we have the equitable distribution, and we also are inclusive. So with all this, we need to see what is the best way forward for this. So my office, the Principal Scientific Advisor to the Government of India, looks at this from really all the stakeholders' point of view. We really work across all the ministries, all the academic sector, as well as industry. So this approach really brings synergy in what is required for the country, and I like this word which was mentioned, anticipation. In fact, that is actually at the core of our working. So we really anticipate what would be needed for the society. I'll give you two examples so that I make it concrete. We learned a lot from COVID. We realized that it is not only the human or the animal or the wildlife which really responsible, it is a mix of all three. There is a cross correlations and so on. So our office conceptualized this One Health mission under the Prime Minister's Science, Technology, Innovation Advisory Council, where we have brought almost 13 ministries together to fill the gaps. So this is where one example of science and the science policy and of course the associated funding makes a big difference. Second thing, which is again, science has to be inclusive and it is to reach all parts of the society, especially in developing economies where we have challenges. So we came out with the concept of one nation, one subscription to the scientific literature, because we had a lot of colleges and universities which could not afford the high-end journals to the level it was required in an interdisciplinary fashion. So this one nation, one subscription which is conceptualized by our office and implemented now, really has enlarged the reach of this scientific knowledge to all government colleges and institutes in the phase 1, all, without fail. With the result that the outreach has increased 10 times, and of course it comes at a cost, which is of course without saying, but it also makes the interdisciplinarity as a core of this research, a core point. So there are many things which I can go, but the last one, which probably I'll again mention, again is in AI context, artificial intelligence context. Again, here we have a divide in the world between the haves and have-nots. So this digital divide, which was there a few years ago, is translating into AI divide. So what we did, we realized that you need compute resources, which are democratically available to all our researchers and startups. We need the data sets and of course the deployment. So under this AI mission, which is again part of our PM's advisory council, we have now put compute resources available to anyone in the academic sector and startups, which is the cost is borne by government. Again, democratizing the access to these high-end technologies. Now, this is one way where we are putting the data in a federated manner, again hoping that it will be done. So these are some few examples which really see how we build resilience in our ecosystem, where the science policy is not in isolation, but really looking at the needs of all sectors of the society, making sure that the science benefits reach the ultimate level. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And this might be a nice segue to a question to you, Professor Korsten. So you lead the African Academy of Sciences. Professor Sood just talked about resilience of ecosystems and this convening multi-stakeholders, multiple voices. And so the African continent, of course, has extraordinary scientific talent and innovation potential, also resource constraints, obviously. So from your perspective, what does resilience look like in research ecosystems in Africa, and do or how can global partnerships strengthen the resilience?
Thank you very much. Let me first tell you what a privilege to sit here in this beautiful room. I love the colors, the purple and red, and what an honor to be part of this very important opening meeting in Geneva. And I'm just looking at GESDA's mission and how it aligns with the African Academy of Sciences. And it is really, how do we strengthen science and harness diplomacy and use that for human benefit? You know, I'm also Magdalena Skipper. Thank you very much for your presentation. And you highlighted a very important aspect, the natural ecosystems and how that aligns with research ecosystems. Now, you emphasized diversity, adaptability, and healthy interactions. And I'm really reminded of Africa's unparalleled potential. And it really embodies these principles, and it's currently unfolding. But I have to share with you, I'm actually a microbial ecologist and a plant pathologist, so I used to teach students the RNK principles and population density mechanisms. So what I want to say is population density is very important within the community interaction. So you will always have positive and negative interactions. And perhaps we are focusing so much on fostering those positive interactions that we forget those negative interactions are that self-regulatory system. So from an ecosystems point of view in science, I think we can look at microbial ecosystems and learn a lot from that. And just so, by the way, that's Africa's incredible potential, our biodiversity, plants, animals, and let's not forget the microbes, extremely important. And within that lies the future, our indigenous crops, if we can unravel that potential. But with it comes our scientific community and almost unrecognized potential that's lying in the African continent. We have, I call it science blindness, we have actually forgotten to look at other continents, and particularly the South, to go and find those scientific gems and enable them to become the science leaders. I was just looking at the newly announced Nobel Prize winners, and I was just thinking, where's the African scientists? And I was actually speaking to Professor Malek Maza, and he actually reminded me of one of his papers in 2012 that was actually almost a forerunner to that. And I thought, what can we do within the African continent to empower these scientists and create an empowering pathway? Because it's one thing to say we should have interaction, and I loved your slides showing the networks, but Africa's in the periphery. How do we put Africa in the center? It is the biggest continent, one of the biggest, and we have the youth. The future lies in the African continent, and we get the least of the funding share. So how do we better manage the funding so that we can ensure it actually goes to the scientists on the ground? And how do we enable them and empower them to become part of these global partnerships and to take their rightful place? And not just to be the object of the research study, but a leader in these research studies. So there's a wealth in the continent, as we all know. We all know we need these partnerships. We need to strengthen it and really to look at the resilience within those systems. And I think a lot of that can be found in how we move funding into the continent. And we really need a new order. We need a new way of thinking funding for the scientists within the continent. Because a lot of funding has been siphoned off or did not find its way to the scientists on the ground. And the mobility for scientists to move just within the continent is a challenge on its own. So if you have a top African scientist, you must know that's an extraordinary scientist because they had to overcome all those obstacles. So if we cooperate and we work as an ecosystem, I believe we can unlock this. And within the challenges lies the opportunities for the future. And we can, as we rightfully said, Magdalene, walk together and share the future and the challenges and the opportunities.
Thank you. If I can just follow up on a couple of points, because what you said made new ideas in my mind. So it is about access, of course, to science, but it is also, and maybe more, the possibility to contribute to the science and, of course, to benefit, more broadly speaking, but also to contribute. So in that sense, what do you see the role of open science is, what are its sort of most important facets that we should maybe bring forward on stage and not forget about?
So, it's about data and access to science and even laboratories. Creating the data, owning the data, controlling it, partnering that data, and with it comes IP and that intellectual property rights that we need to co-develop and optimize. But if we just take a step back around open science, how can we think of models that can actually, from, let's just use biosecurity point of view, have a rapid diagnostic system throughout the continent? We can look at the Ebola virus example and what the scientists did and how they got involved in vaccine development. If we can, for instance, unpack a whole model of mobile laboratories and have all those data points connected continental-wise with our partnerships to analyze and predict and move towards risk assessment and mitigation. And I think it's a new order of thinking that we need to unpack, and that co-ownership, because it is about who owns the data, who manages it, and who has access to it. And how do we use that as an opportunity and not a threat?
Thank you very much. And this might be another interesting segue to you, Professor Muûls. So we heard from Professor Sood the question of interdisciplinarity. We just heard and talked about this open science and the question of having a sort of a democratic, so to speak, access to it and contribution to it. Your work is very much focused at Imperial on the convergence of Science and Sustainability, which is sort of very explicitly where a connection has to happen. So in terms of practical steps that universities and research institutions can take to make these ecosystems resilient, what do you see that could be fast? Because it has to adapt to fast-moving challenges, and universities might not be known for, maybe more known for inertia than speed.
Thank you. I think there are several things that universities can do and can do now. And we're trying to do this at Imperial. So the first is, I think, to shift from a discipline base to a mission base. So why is it we're doing science? You know, scientists love their science, but it really helps to think about who we are doing science for and why. So, for example, at Imperial, we have a strategy. We've called it Science for Humanity. So as was mentioned earlier, not science for a small group of humanity, but all of humanity. And you mentioned our schools of convergence science. They are about thinking about the missions that scientists can work on together. For example, in sustainability, but also in human and artificial AI, in space, communication, in health and technology. So from disciplines to missions is one. A second is to invest in our connective tissue, which we often call in universities our convening power. And Magdalena, you talked about resilience in nature, and resilience in nature often comes from relationships, helping each other and relying on each other. And so this is really important in academic research because we can't deliver on a mission if we don't do science that will be relevant to the people we are doing it for. So, for example, at Imperial, we've created in the past year some new hubs, one in India, one in Ghana. So these hubs, their aim is to help connect not only scientists to scientists, but also scientists to communities, to policymakers, to diplomats, and to make sure that our solutions, the solutions we're working on, will have a global relevance. So, for example, I have colleagues at Imperial working on AI tools to deliver health and diagnostics in a frugal way. So all these are really key is relationships. And a third that was also mentioned is to champion inclusive research culture. And by inclusive, we don't only mean integrating early career researchers or different diversity of researchers, but also diversity in the people with which we design our research projects and the way we deliver them. And so in our schools of convergence science, what we want to do is to co-create these missions. And I invite all of you to be part of that co-creation. So, for example, we've been working on air quality in cities by working with communities that live in the areas where air quality is the worst. And then finally, what we're working on now is how can we translate convergence science into capability for action. So by creating the right tools, analytical tools or design tools, we also have to keep in mind where we're going and to give ourselves the science and the solutions that can help us respond really fast to the evolving nature of the problems we're facing in 5, 10, and 25 years. And doing so by ensuring the work we do is trusted by those that are therefore co-creating both the questions, the missions, and the solutions. So lots to do, but it can start now.
Thank you very much. So lots to do. I will pick that word. So we heard perspectives from government advice, from global science leadership, from universities. and then what to do indeed. Can you maybe share one thing that you would prioritize to do in the next 5 years in your own sphere of influence, so in the role and the tools that you have at your disposal, so that these research ecosystems can remain agile, trusted, and diverse. So it's about that one lever. Maybe, Professor Sood, can we start with you?
Yeah. I think it's a very deep question, rather. It can't be answered in few minutes. But what I think is that the trust factor, which was also mentioned in one of the slides, is really at the key of how much we trust the science advice in handling this. Because science advice also has a problem or a difficulty when the subject is evolving very fast, because you have incomplete information and unknown challenges. For example, I can give you so that when we are talking of artificial general intelligence or the super intelligence as it is called, have we really thought through what is in store for us? Because maybe it is 3 years away, but the dangers of that, I don't think we can run away. So this is where one has to see the science advice as well as what we implement on ground have some synergy. It can't be just in isolation. Even the simple AI, which is so much everywhere in everyday news, what is the governance mechanism? I don't think there is any agreement between different governments. Europe has certain policy framework, US has come out with another policy framework, and India's national AI governance, which the committee which I chaired, will be coming out any day in a few days, where we have tried to strike a balance between nimble regulation without curbing the innovation. So in the fear of some harm, you cannot curb all the innovations. So it's a delicate balance, and I think we need to understand that this should be a dynamic process of engagement with all the stakeholders. It cannot be the top-down approach where we really decide and everything flows smoothly. Many examples we have learned from our Indian digital public infrastructure, where we had a huge impact on the society using the technology, especially unified payments, where 18 billion payments are made every month and so on, and all the platforms and so on. Now, this is a beautiful example where the technology really went to the masses. Now, there, if you try to do the governance, again, by looking at each complaint, what happens and so on, it won't work. Similarly, it won't work in AI. So what we are proposing is, and which we have implemented in DPI, is the techno-legal framework. Use the technology for addressing the legal challenges. So this techno-legal can be done for AI, it can be done for, let's say, even other technologies, let's say system biology, what are the challenges if it comes. Whatever you think of the technology will always have two sides. It's not only one side. So we need to come up with the mechanism that we don't really kill it. We need to live with the dangers without really falling victim to it. So it's an ongoing process, and I have a feeling when the science advice really at the center stage, it plays a big role. And that's why we started this Chief Science Advisor Roundtable in the G20 framework. We had 3 editions of that, and it is proving to be a useful platform. And I'm glad that GESDA is another such great platform. And I think it should be there in many more multilateral engagements. I don't think it is there like G7. It's not there as much as in OECD. It's not there in other platforms. Why? Because science and technology is at the center of development. So this is something I think the role of GESDA could be very critical. Thank you.
Thank you. Indeed, it's a role we want to play to use this technological, or the knowledge of these technological breakthroughs to take action early. Professor Korsten, anything to add from
Yes,
your vantage point?
I think GESDA's role to me is so important in terms of unlocking that knowledge pipeline and creating that interactive platform where academia and your public-private sector can really and truly meet. And I just want to go back, take a step back in terms of your educational pipeline. If we talk about a 5-year vision and we are looking at that middle layer of management and how do we get them and your middle layer of top scientists, and how do we fast track them into those leadership roles where they can stand at a world stage any moment and really direct future research and future funding. How do we create that supportive environment to fast track them? And it's really a pipeline of enabling ecosystems that we need to link. And if you look at Africa and the continent and the challenges, how do you include all the countries and all the regions and empower them from a regional point of view? And you move them not from being exploited, but from being the leaders in these major global development. And you know, I just look at the mineral wealth and the current challenges around the exploring and exploitation of that, and how can we ensure that scientists are sitting at the forefront of those discussions around who's going to develop it for the bettering of mankind.
Thank you very much. Professor Muûls?
I think I would add that what I would like to see in the next 5 years is to bring diplomacy into science. So ensuring that scientists, in order to collaborate interdisciplinary in an interdisciplinary way on the breakthrough challenges and in thinking of these missions I mentioned, is to ensure that we understand each other and that we take the time to think of each other's perspective, whether it's a disciplinary perspective, whether it's a language or cultural perspective, but really emphasizing the human relations in forming the scientific breakthroughs. So I think that's what I would think is important for the future.
Great, and starting now with
exactly.
These communities all present here today. Thank you very much, all 3 of you, for this very thoughtful and interesting discussion. We might have actually one question possible from the audience if you have a pressing one and that you would like to share. Which allows us to stay on time. So thank you very much for complying. I didn't want not to have this opportunity. So thank you very much again. And we will move on to the next part. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.